Hi, I'm Noah Rolland, Director of Programming here at Trx. Today I'm joined by Brian Bettendorf. Brian heads up our sports medicine program. And today we're going to explore the concept of mobility and how it relates to flexibility. Right, Brian?
That's correct, Noah. Thanks. So when we talk about flexibility, really what you can think of is the total available range of motion around the joint. And in this case, if we're just looking at how much shoulder flexion you get through that glenohumeral joint, we can measure this fairly passively. What it doesn't tell us, though, is how well you can actually use that motion. So when we talk about mobility exercises, what we're really referring to is the idea of incorporating motion or the ability to move. And hopefully what we're doing is taking advantage of that flexibility by integrating strength into that motion, but that strength has to be for the appropriate duration and of the appropriate amount in order to make it a mobility exercise. So let's see how we can incorporate that with a TRX wall slide.
Right.
The TRX wall slide, you're going to stand facing the anchor point. TRX is just to mid-length. I'm going to start with those palms and the foot cradles. From here, body's going to stay upright, so you're still maintaining the stability through the trunk, maintaining this plank, this lengthened body position. From here now, this active component that we're talking about, you're going to actively move those arms up and down. And while you're moving those arms up and down, you're retracting the scapula to engage those parascapular muscles. You're trying to keep the scapula pulled both back and down, which then starts to tie in how we're moving through that glenohumeral joint, but building on top of that, stability through the trunk, the hips, the lower extremities.
And Brian, just a point, because sometimes you can't tell when you're watching on video, really important here that I am pressing back with the hands.
Exactly. By activating these parascapular muscles, you're helping to break some of that tension to the front of the body, getting some movement through the joint, increasing that joint lubrication. As you actively move, kind of softening up the tissue through there, and maintaining a plank so you have the stability throughout the rest of the body as you move, which ties into what we've talked about before of proximal stability for distal mobility. Now let's see how we can take this and build a strength exercise and take it into a mobility exercise.
Okay.
So we take something like the TRX split fly. And you can start out, find that end range of motion, take a fairly steep vector angle for you so it becomes a strength exercise. Here we're incorporating the mobility that we gained with the wall slides. Bigger challenge on being able to maintain that plank. More work through the upper extremity and the parascapular muscles. Through the mobility has helped this motion out. And then by simply keeping the vector the same but going into an offset stance, we can start to unload this now. So now we've probably decreased the load through the upper extremity by nearly 50%. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Hard to tell when you're watching somebody on a suspension trainer, but just going to an offset stance, I could actually probably cut this down to about 80% of what I was doing before.
And if we want to take that down even more, now let's just turn this into a straight mobility exercise. I want you to get upright, so no load whatsoever. But find that end range, and now you're simply going to walk through this exercise, Noah. So really low load. It allows you to focus on the quality of the movement now. You can think about how that arm is moving into flexion, how you're stabilizing through the trunk. By getting that split fly, we're incorporating a little bit of thoracic mobility, which will then tie into that shoulder flexibility that we tested in the beginning.
Right. So it's not necessarily the movement, but what we're doing with the movement that defines whether or not this is a mobility exercise. So we can take strength exercises, decrease load, and really focus on more motor control and a little bit less resistance, more isolation, focusing a little bit more on proximal stability to be able to get that distal mobility, and then it becomes a mobility exercise.
That's absolutely correct, Noah.
Great. Well, hopefully this is going to help clear up the difference between flexibility and mobility as we relate to suspension training and rip training here at TRX.